I've taken a lot more bites in grooming than training. I think because you don't always know what you're getting into with grooming. Maybe the dog comes in and it looks pretty okay, and then you touch its foot and it's like, that's the end of the world there, right?
Hi, everyone. My name is Matthew Maltese, and this is the Pet to Pal podcast. Today, I'm joined by Kyra Grams of Simcoe County Canine.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Thanks for being here. I appreciate
of course.
it. I usually like to start off just asking people about your love for dogs and maybe your first dog and kind of how you got into this and take us kind of down the journey of what led to your business.
Yeah, I mean, I could talk for hours about my first dog.
Perfect. You're at the right place then.
He's my soulmate. But yeah, I think a lot of trainers have the story of they got the difficult dog that they needed help with, and then they found the passion in that way. I almost went the opposite way. I started in a bit of agility and just kind of dabbling in dog sports with my first dog. And then through that, I really found my passion for it and just started like nerding out about all things dog training. I wanted all the books and I wanted to follow the YouTube channels and the Instagram accounts. And then through that was around the time that COVID was kind of coming to an end. Not that it ever fully ended, but you know what I mean? All the dogs were starting to be pushed into shelters because people were going back to work and all that. And I was thinking, I could really make a difference for one of these dogs that needs a home that's a bit more than the average owner, right? So I went on Kijiji and I found a 10-month-old super drivey, super high energy border collie that had like the list of problems. She had like dog reactivity, human reactivity, separation anxiety. She wasn't house trained, like all the things. And so I wanted that challenge because I wanted to put what I felt like I had been learning to like the test kind of thing, right? And then through working with her and like trying to work her through these issues, I was like just constantly learning more. And I was like, wow, this is becoming like a real love. It's kind of taking over all my other passions. I was actually in school for wildlife conservation at the time.
Cool.
Yeah. And I ended up dropping out because I was like, dog training is it. This is what I got to do.
That's awesome. Yeah. Oddly enough, I originally was going to go into policing in the canine unit. I did security, got my gun license, did like all the things that, you do. And then I actually was going to pivot into wildlife conservation because they get to like drive around the forest with their dog and, enforce hunting, laws and stuff. And I was like, that sounds cool. Just drive around the woods all day with my dog. And, so yeah, interesting how we kind of took different paths, but got to the same place. But that's awesome. What's your favorite part of dog training? Is there something specific you love about it?
Yeah. So with the wildlife conservation, as much as I was passionate about it and I still am, it really lacked the like problem solving aspect for me. And I have just loved that so much with dog training. And even like as I get better at it, more confident with it, and it kind of seems a bit repetitive, there's always the one dog that throws you for a loop. And you're like, oh, I got to think here. And I love that, just like working it out, whether it's like sport related or behavioral mod or whatever it is, just that problem solving. And then when you see it happen, the problem solving works. It's like, that is just the most rewarding feeling.
100%. I feel the same way. When you go to a lesson and the dog doesn't know what you want, and then you see it kind of over the hour, like starting like, okay, they start offering the behavior.
Yes.
And, that's fun for me. It's like seeing this thing like start to like have that aha moment.
Yeah,
right?
You see the gears turning. Exactly. You're like, oh, something's happening in that head. Yeah.
Do you still do agility and dog sports and stuff like that?
Yeah, I do dog diving kind of casually, more for fun. Neither of my dogs are super competitive. My Aussie jumps like 6 feet. It's really cute.
Nice.
But I do agility with my border collie.
Okay.
She's pretty intense and she's fast. And so it's a lot of fun with her. And then I have a 3-month-old puppy that I'm raising to be my next agility dog as well.
What are their names?
Rhett is the Aussie, Ray is a border collie, and Sprite is my Moody.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're saying we hear the same names over and over. So kudos to you for some creativity. I've never heard a dog named Sprite before. So Sprite, if you're looking for an endorsement or something, care. But no, that's very cool. When you first started getting into it, you mentioned you were kind of seeking out different, books and information and Instagram accounts and stuff.
Yeah.
Did you find that overwhelming at all, or was it information overload? Because I'm sure maybe you're the same, where I get a lot of clients that say like, I'm getting all this information from all these different places and YouTube and Instagram and TikTok and books and I just don't know what's true, what's not, what I should do. How did you find that process of like trying to absorb, everything you were looking into?
Yeah, I definitely understand where clients are coming from when they say that, because even like now when I go on Instagram and I see 1,000 different things, I'm like, oh man, there's so many approaches to go about this stuff, right? At the beginning, I think I was pretty confident in kind of like the style of training I wanted to deviate towards. I'd grown up with a Doberman and a German Shepherd, and so there was always rules and boundaries and that kind of thing, right? It was never on the super fluffy, force-free side. Yep. And so I was pretty confident that I wanted a good relationship and a positive experience with the dog, but I also wanted to have firm boundaries, and that dog listens well and that kind of thing. So I think that helped point me in the direction I wanted to go.
And just for anyone listening or watching, fair to say then that you're a balanced trainer? Is that kind of how you would identify yourself?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. What kind of role do you think, aversives can play? Not to get right into like, that.
No,
that
we're doing
path,
it. We're here now.
But what kind of role do you think aversives play in training?
I personally think that there's nothing wrong with, and even it can be a good thing to tell a dog, hey, I don't want you to do that. Yeah. And I think it can be as simple as that. That's the role that they play. Mm-hmm. When you're talking behavioral mod, I'm not necessarily someone who thinks you just correct a dog into getting the behavior you want, but then the emotion of the dog doesn't matter. Yeah. I want to see a genuine emotional change in the dog. But I don't think there's an issue with telling a dog, don't do that. That's a boundary.
Yeah.
Right? Especially when, you're setting them up in fair situations, right? And in like a board and train or like a private lesson or something, that we are specifically picking moments that are going to set the dog up for a fair situation. Yeah. So you're kind of teetering that line of like, I want you to be successful, but you should also understand if I have to tell you no here.
For sure. And you mentioned you do board and trains. Did you start off doing board and trains right away, or did you kind of start, maybe doing private lessons and transition to board and trains? Or like, how did the development of your services kind of come to be?
Yeah, I started with private lessons kind of just as like a side job. I've been a groomer for about 8 years now.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, so I was doing that, and then I saw the need for training through that, and that's when I started to offer private lessons just to like clients here and there who, like grooming clients who needed that little extra help. Yeah. And then actually my first board and train dog wasn't even something I sought out. It was a friend of a friend who had adopted a dog from the Humane Society, had him for, I think, 2 days, and they were ready to take him back. And I was like, let me take that dog. And they didn't want to put the money down to do it at the time, which I get. You've known the dog for 2 days. You're maybe not that invested. And I was like, let me do it for free. If I can take this dog out of the shelter, let me help you out. And the dog ended up doing so well that they ended up just wanting to pay me for it.
Oh, nice.
And that's about 2 years ago now. Dog's still in the home. I still get updates here and there, and they're in love with him.
That's great. That's, when you get those success stories that like, hey, we're still implementing your training stuff, and we still see the results and the benefit of it and everything. That's, the best kind of messages you can get, best updates.
I just love to see people enjoying life with their dogs, right?
Yeah, the same way. I got into this same thing, wanting to help people improve the quality of life with their dog and have the relationship and lifestyle with their dog that I got to have with my dog.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's an interesting transition, going from groomer to training. Now, would you say training is your first, business, or like you said, you were a groomer, training was kind of on the side. Has that like flip-flopped now, or what do you kind of spend more time doing?
Yeah. So for the last couple years, I was just grooming part-time just so I could kind of keep the clients that like wanted to work with me and that kind of thing. And training became my more full-time thing. And just about a month ago, I totally phased out grooming. So I feel like I just stepped into like, I'm a dog trainer now.
Good for you. I was going to ask you some grooming questions, but maybe now.
No, we can talk grooming.
Okay. How do you, how would you deal with like a behavioral dog, a dog that's flailing or, doesn't like the muzzle, or, you're struggling with, and maybe what is the relationship that training can have on the grooming process, and maybe the relationship between trainers and groomers and how those are kind of married in a way as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think a lot of dealing with difficult dogs in a grooming situation is management, right? Maybe you need a second person to hold the dog, maybe a muzzle, that kind of stuff. It's also important that dogs that are especially like very fearful see the same groomer over and over.
Build that trust.
Yeah. So it's not like, who are you? Is this a totally new experience with you kind of thing, right? And then the process gets easier. I think a lot of people think just giving the dog the exposure is going to make it better. But if the dog is fearful every time, they're having a bad experience every time.
Yep.
And then the exposure is taking them the opposite direction.
Exactly. Exposure is half of it, but the other half is making sure it's a good experience, right?
Exactly.
Which is why, like, most puppies usually only go for a bath and tidy their first appointment.
Exactly.
Let's just give them a good experience.
Yeah,
We're not
make it
going to do
easy.
anything too strenuous. Let them go home feeling good about themselves.
Yeah,
and,
let them
you know,
zoom around a little
yeah,
bit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And what skills or what even like defensive handling, that you learned from grooming, do you feel like it now helps you with your training?
I was just joking about this with a friend the other day because I was like, almost defensive handling in grooming has set me up worse for training.
Interesting.
Because it's just made my reflexes really snappy, right?
Yeah.
You're like, because you're not like holding the leash or something,
Yep.
right? Both hands are occupied.
Yep.
So if a dog goes to go for you and you maybe haven't prepared by having a muzzle or another person, your only defense is get out of the way,
True.
right? Or just hold the dog in a way that they can't get to you. But then, yeah, my friend and I were joking about this because I was like, now a dog like makes a noise. And I'm like, oh.
I always try to preach to clients because, I have a lot of groomer friends and I see, and I've hung out at the salons for the day and, hanging out with them, helping them out when I can. And, a dog that hasn't been trained to enjoy grooming, to enjoy the process, hasn't been conditioned to the sounds and the tools and, the whole, being poked and prodded.
Yeah.
Is going to struggle, and that's going to make, number one, the haircut's not going to come out as good, number one. Number two, the groomer is going to struggle doing that. Maybe you need 2 or 3 people to help, where now you're maybe getting a behavior charge on top. And then C, the dog is stressed the whole time, right? So I always tell people, your groomer is not responsible for making your dog like grooming, right? That's a training job that should happen at home early and often, getting your dog used to the brush, the clipper, putting them on the table, just everything that goes into that process. And you have to look at it as an investment where even if you have to hire a trainer, that's fine. But, spending a couple $100s, a couple sessions to help a trainer get your dog to like grooming is going to A, make your dog less stressed at the groomer, B, going to make your groomer less stressed dealing with your dog.
Yeah.
And, you're not going to get behavior charges anymore. And B, you're going to get better haircuts. So, look at it as an investment versus just like, okay, we'll just power through this every 6 months or whatever it is, right?
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I think, although I don't think it's the groomer's job to make the dog like it, I think it is the groomer's job to lower their expectations with those dogs, right? I don't think you should fight a dog through something that they're having a hard time with and now you're getting frustrated with just to get a good haircut.
Yeah.
If you can get them comfortable and, maybe like you get their eyes cleared out and their nails done and that kind of thing, just the necessities, if that's all they can handle before your emotions are going to start to go up, then just leave it there and just be open and honest with the owner.
Yep.
And if they don't like it, then that's on them. But
and that's the thing. I think a lot of people are like, well, he's perfect at home without, or, the last place we went to never said there was any problems. And it's like, well, they just wanted you to keep coming back.
Yeah, it's kind of like, what were they telling you?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so now you've transitioned fully to training. What do you feel like lifestyle-wise, the shift from, kind of standing at a table all day and, being on your feet like that to now maybe driving around for private lessons or doing board and trains? Like, what's been the lifestyle transition?
Yeah, so I find since I phased out grooming fully, and like I said, that was pretty recently, but it's been a lot lighter load. I don't feel like I have this on top of clients, on top of board and trains. I was feeling like I had 3 jobs, right?
Makes sense, yeah.
And grooming wasn't really my passion. I like to do grooming when it's an art, when I can zone in for 3 hours and create a beautiful thing. But most people are just shave the dog down, right? Yeah. And that's not what I'm passionate about. So I feel like I have a lot more energy and I'm liking this lifestyle a lot more when it's I'm either just training or I'm hiking with dogs or I can create my own schedule a bit more. And yeah, the driving around can be a bit of a downside, but everyone's job has a bit of a downside. Exactly. You're not going to love every minute of it.
That's fair. That's fair. Because I think a lot of people just figure, oh, you're a groomer, you're a trainer, it's just puppies all day long. It must be so great. And it's there's downsides, when you have a behavior mod case or a dog that wants to rip your hand off. It's not all just cute puppies all the time.
Yeah. I did have a guy recently say to me, no offense, but you're just playing with dogs all day. I was like, well, do you see these scars on my arm?
You want to trade? You tried for a day. So I'm assuming you've been bit or I'm sure we all have.
Yeah.
What's been maybe some of your more challenging cases so far since you've started training?
Yeah, I've taken a lot more bites in grooming than training. I think because you don't always know what you're getting into with grooming. Maybe the dog comes in and it looks pretty okay, and then you touch its foot and it's like, that's the end of the world there, right? With training, I found my most difficult cases have been the dogs that are hard to motivate.
Yes.
I don't find it's the dogs that are like super amped and like tough guy and like the dogs you can't break them. Not that that's what I'm trying to do. It's the dogs that are like, I don't care about your food. I don't care about your toys, your affection. Like nothing matters.
And how do you handle it? How do you go about like building more drive, building that motivation?
A lot of play. I try to spend the first like week or so just trying to get the dog to play with me. We're not going for walks. We go out in the yard and I just want you to play with me and trying to end it on a high note. So they're going, that was fun. Let's do that again. And even using food to play so that there is that motivation, like, oh, I haven't had breakfast and now we're going out to train and maybe I want to chase the food in your hand, right? And I find if a lot of the time you're just taking the dog out to do that, they're like, oh, if this is what we're going to do, I can get used to this, right? And a lot of it is just them getting comfortable.
Yeah, totally. I think there's always like a little bit of a decompression period when a dog comes for board and train. What would you say is maybe a misconception people might have? Like, I think when we hear compulsion trainer, positive only, or balance, I think there's automatically an association that goes with that, right? What would you say maybe is like a misconception about your training style that, you know, the average person might not be aware of?
Yeah, kind of like what I touched on earlier. I think people assume if you're using corrections, you don't care about the dog's emotional state, right? And so I don't think those two go hand in hand. I think you can care very much about the dog's emotional state and get genuine emotional change and also use corrections.
Yeah.
I think the other thing is that with balance trainers, well, you just care about it being fast. You want it to be efficient. Actual behavior change takes months, which I don't disagree with. But I think if I can get the dog to a good place in like a 4-week board and train, then why spend months doing that same thing?
Yeah,
right?
No, that's fair.
Especially because their lives aren't that long. If you're getting 10 years with a dog and you're taking 6 months to be able to like calmly take it for a walk, you know, or take it on a hike or something.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you shorten that if you could?
Totally. And I think, people maybe associate faster with shortcut.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily the case. Sometimes it can, they can be like people that slap on an e-collar, zap, zap, zap. Sure. It can be that way, but that's not necessarily the case, right? Going faster doesn't necessarily mean that you're not still layering in those behaviors and proofing them and conditioning them and doing all the things that, go into the longer process, right?
Yeah. We've all seen that like before and after of the dog and after it's tail tucked and ears are back and it's kind of like tense with every step. That's not what I'm aiming for.
Yeah, we don't want a dog that's shut down.
Exactly. I want to see a relaxed dog, but still using my methods, right?
Yeah. What would you say is maybe the most misused tool? And when I say tool, I'm talking praise, I'm talking food, I'm talking, I know people think tool like e-collar, prong collar, but it could be anything. Like, what do you think is maybe the most misused part of training?
Yeah, I would touch on praise and prong collars, so kind of on opposite ends of the spectrum there. Praise, people just like give it out to their dogs all the time. And I do too, but my dogs also understand when it's enough of that, or when I ask them to do something, they have to follow through with it and things like that. But I see, like, for example, the current board and train I have right now, he's like a 100-pound boxer mix. He loves affection, like probably the most valuable thing in his world. And walking with his owner the other day, doing a session around dogs for the first time, and he looks at a dog and you see him like maybe get a little tense, and she's like, that's a good boy. And he's like, me? And he just turns back to her and she just loves on him, and the dog walked right past and he was like, I don't care because I'm getting this from you. Yeah. And so I made a point of being like, save it for those moments. Yeah. Especially in the early stages of them transitioning back together, right? Don't you just see him in the morning and you're all over him and you're all over him at any point of the day. And then when you need that tool, he's like, I'll get it later.
Yeah, it's been devalued a little bit, right?
Exactly.
That's right, continue.
And then what I was saying about prong collars, so often I go for a consultation, you probably see this too, and they're like, well, this is what we walk the dog on. It's a big chunky one and it hangs around here.
It's more like a necklace,
Yeah, and the dog's just pulling into it and it's not doing anything. And then it becomes so much harder to condition that dog to respond to the pressure of it, right? But it can be such a helpful tool if you can just give a little like touch and say, hey, come this way, redirect this way. And so I think those need to be a lot less common or a lot more properly conditioned.
And that's totally valid. And I think that goes with almost any tool, where once a tool has been desensitized or conditioned in a certain way where the dog doesn't care about it, doesn't like it, the pressure doesn't mean anything anymore, right? It's so much harder to undo that, right? It could be your dog, you used your crate as punishment, now your dog hates your crate, now we need to undo that, right? Before we can actually like move forward with what we want to do with the training, right? So yeah, I think using a tool properly from the beginning is really, it's always better to work with a blank slate rather than having to undo, extra problems and extra challenges along the way, right? I think that's a good point. Praise is or he's now in that situation. You were saying the boxer saw the other dog started to get a little bit tense. The owner praised it, and the dog was so happy and earned his reward. What do you think about for example, like dogs that are stressed, right? Let's say there's fireworks, and the human instinct is like, it's okay, mommy's here, it's okay, right? Sort of like reinforcing what they're currently feeling. Like in that situation, if the boxer is getting tense, do you feel like the owner praising it is reinforcing the dog getting tense, or is it like redirecting it?
I think there's a line, and that line is going to be specific to each dog. I think there's a line with now you're making a bad choice versus just being like a bit too alert about a dog, because I don't want my dogs to feel like they can't look at another dog. I don't want you to think that's wrong. I ideally want them to be able to look at a dog and be like, whatever. But if he's looking, I can see it just like teetering a little bit, and all I have to say is like, good boy. And he's like, oh, okay. And you can see it like lighten
Body language changes.
Exactly. Then why not use that?
Yeah, totally.
Right?
Again, nothing wrong with our dog looking at their triggers as long as we know that we can get that attention, that concentration back on us when we need it. Right? If your dog locks on and you can't break that fixation, then okay, maybe, and this is where I think like sometimes positive only trainers are like, oh, your dog, and this is why I think people get frustrated is, our dog's reactive to other dogs. And so we sought out a trainer, and the trainer said, oh, your dog barks at other dogs. Like, just walk late at night when there's no other dogs. And it's like, all right, like, yeah, we can do that for a little while, but that can't be a long-term solution, right? Like, I think the benefit of that is avoiding your triggers at the beginning while you're still building your skills, right? Building your focus, building your leave it, building, your tools that you're going to use. And when I say tools, I mean, cues, commands that are in your toolbox, not physical tools.
Right.
Building those skills. That way, in a couple weeks, when now we're ready to walk around our triggers, if my dog is looking at that dog, I have a leave it, a focus, a whatever to redirect them, right? But yeah, I think people get frustrated when the training solution from some people is just avoid triggers. It's like, well, that's not life. You can't avoid triggers forever, right? So I'm the same way. I don't mind my dog looking at a trigger as long as I know that when I need that attention back, I can get it back. Right? If my dog was fixating, I probably wouldn't let them look for now. I would build my skills, then go back to that situation.
Yeah, and in that same situation, if, his hair had gone up and the ears were forward and he was then that wouldn't have been.
Yeah, if the body language was different. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just finding that line, and I think that's a lot of a trainer's job to help people understand, okay, that's where you're going to use this, and that's where you're going to use that.
Exactly. And that's a good point. Do you have certain breeds or even certain maybe behavioral things that you like to work on? Like I got a few trainees that, didn't really want to work with puppies. They were like, I want the behavior mod. I want the aggression cases. I want, they're just like, I woke up and I want problems always. Do you have maybe certain breeds or certain, issues or things that you like working on more than others?
Certain breeds, anything with drive is going to be my favorite. Obviously, I like a challenge as well. So a lower drive dog presents challenge. So I enjoy that. But I have a very high drive border collie. I fostered Mals and Dutchies, and those are my
You're
favorite.
Used to driving sports cars. You're like, I'm not taking a Fiat or a little Toyota out for a rip. I want
the dogs that everything just clicks so fast for them, and it's so rewarding. And maybe that's a little selfish because it's super rewarding for me to train those dogs because they just get it. And especially because I incorporate a lot of play into my training, those dogs love to play. And, I love when I go to a client's house and they're like, my dog is spun out. They want to bite everything. They want to jump at everything. They can't. And I'm like, oh, here we go. I'm like, we're going to have
watch
fun
this.
with this one.
Nice.
I love getting like a cattle dog or something like that, right? In terms of like the type of stuff I like to work through, I do find reactivity very rewarding. Or I've worked with a couple dogs that like have had some fear aggression towards people.
Okay.
And when you see that shift and they start to like open up, it's just so great, right? Like you can just see like the change in their eyes almost. And it's like you feel better about this situation, which is just the best thing to see.
Yeah.
I haven't worked with any dogs that are like too hard into aggression, but I see the want to work with those dogs.
Fair. You want a challenge. That's good. It's good to challenge yourself and push your skills.
And those relationships are always so strong when you build them, right? Which also just feels so great to be able to communicate with that dog.
Totally. And how do you sort of handle maybe owners that might say like, I don't have time to train on a daily basis, or, I don't take my dog on walks, or or maybe don't agree with a certain exercise or method or tool. Like, I don't want to do that. I'm not going to use it. Like, how do you kind of go about maybe owners that not are pushing back on your advice or whatever, but how do you get owners maybe motivated to kind of, follow through with the things that you're asking them to?
Yeah, I think you're kind of talking about two separate things. So I think if we're talking about the person who says, I don't have time to train, I don't have time to walk my dog, I don't want to work with that person.
Yeah.
And maybe that's a hot take.
No, that's fair. I think,
but
honestly, and this is going to be a hot take, I think as trainers, we have to normalize firing clients.
Yep, absolutely.
Sorry, but because if you're not willing to put any work in, any effort, what do you expect us to do in 1 hour a week with you? Like, it's just not going to happen, right? And to your point, at the end of the day, the dog that you work with is going to be, whether we like it or not, is going to be a reflection of us, right? If they don't practice anything and then they're at the dog park later, oh yeah, I worked with Pet to Pal or Simcoe County, and people are like, oh, that's a Pet to Pal dog? Like, I don't want that.
That's the result you got.
I want people that are going to practice. I want people that are going to I want your dog to be well behaved, have a good quality of life. I want you to be a happy owner, informed, educated, and I want the dog to be a good representation of what I do. Right.
Yes.
And so I think, maybe that's a hot take, and that's fine. I'm going to get some hate for that. I'm ready for it. That's okay. But no, I totally agree.
And I think those are the owners that are going to leave you bad reviews when it doesn't work out too, right? And if it's not working out because of their lack to do anything, then that's not on you at all. So I think if you can recognize that in the early stages, and that's why I always do consultations first, is you can usually get a feel of that then. And then you just stay away from those people.
I know some trainers implement sort of like accountability things where like they require the owner to send them a 5-minute video every day of them working with the dog. Yeah. Or, do you kind of implement any sort of stuff like that? Or
I do get people to send me videos. It's not always an easy thing to do. I have had times where, it's the day of the second session or whatever. I'm like, you've sent me nothing. I have no idea where your dog's at. We can't do this session today because I don't know where to go from here. I don't know if you need to meet me somewhere, if I need to come to your house and we need to revisit this. The clients that send me videos get huge praise. I love that.
Positive reinforcement. Positive reinforcement.
Working in real time.
Maybe you could talk a little bit on that of, being a trainer, obviously, we have certain ideas of, again, every dog, obviously, every situation is different to an extent, but also we have a general blueprint of like, okay, if we're working on, reactivity, we're going to work on desensitization, we're going to work on engagement, we're going to work on, boundaries, whatever, right? We know like this problem requires these foundational things. Maybe speak a little bit on like when you go to a lesson with an idea of like, okay, today I think we're going to work on this or that. And then you get there and maybe the dog either didn't make as much progress in that way or a new kind of issue comes up. Like I'm working with a Mal mix right now, a puppy. First session, amazing. Engaged, just sat in front of me. The kid at the front of the class, like pick me teacher, engaged the whole time. No nipping, just perfect. Doing great. Second session, and we didn't do any corrections, nothing, it was puppy. We did sit down, place, luring, right? Basic stuff. Second session, I showed up and she was really fearful and nervous all of a sudden. Okay. And they were like, the people said like, the last couple of days, we don't know, whatever. I was like, okay, well, I had an idea of what we were going to do today, but now we're going to pivot, right? We're going to go over confidence building. We're going to go over exposure, practicing neutrality, things that I want you guys to do this week, working her a little bit through stress to build confidence. Maybe if you can speak a little bit on, how us as trainers, when we have a training plan, how we might need to call an audible and change that, and how owners also maybe need to be aware of that too. And, you might want to work on a specific thing with your dog, but realizing and being aware of the dog you have in front of you and what you have to work on in that moment.
Yeah, well, I pretty much go into every lesson with the idea that I want to work on an on and off switch. That's kind of like my basis. That's where we're going to start every time. But then within that can look so much different. Do you have the dog that switches it on really easily and you get out a flirt pole and they're chaotic, but then takes 45 minutes for them to settle afterwards, right? Or do you have the dog that's so hard to motivate that you need to start so small? You chase this treat in my hand for 2 steps, and then maybe it's 4 steps, and then maybe eventually we move to a toy. So I think I never go in too set on like we're doing A, B, and C. It's like these are the concepts I want to work on, and then let's just see what the dog gives me. But I've definitely had times where I've gone in where it's maybe we've set a foundation of that, and then we go to try to like amp it up a bit, and the dog's like, I can't.
You're not ready for it.
Yeah.
And that's where, but you don't know unless you try it, right? Okay. Oh,
exactly.
You know what? It wasn't ready. Let's take a step back.
Yeah.
Let's build up a little bit more. Let's, add in those foundational like layering skills, and then let's go back and try it again in a week or in 2 weeks or whatever, right?
Yeah. And I find for those dogs that get kind of like, oh, that's too much, the really soft ones, you almost have to approach something totally different, or else they get smart to like, oh, but that's going to lead to that.
Yes.
Right. I have one client right now who I actually brought out some of my like foundational agility training stuff to help her with, because the dog just had no ability to think for itself. Anytime there was like the slightest pressure to like think through a problem, he'd curl up and put himself in a corner and just like shut right down. And so I brought out stuff like, okay, let's teach him to wrap this cone. And then he's got to think through the cone being, this distance. And then it's a little further and a little further. And so the picture looks totally different. So he doesn't have that, oh, but it's going to go that way. And I didn't like that. And that was too much. And then you can start it super small, because these are things that you start with like baby dogs, right?
Yeah.
So it should be super easy, and just build them up and show them that they can work through that little bit of stress.
Yeah.
And there's something positive on the other end of it.
For sure. And I there's a couple things I want to actually piggyback, a couple branches I want to go off there.
Yeah.
Let's start there. What do you think the role of working a dog through stress is? Because again, and this is something I've talked to, on almost every episode, because I think it's important, because people see a dog stressed and they freak out. Oh my God, that dog is stressed. It's being abused. It's uncomfortable. It's in pain. It's whatever. And I think we need to, and it's maybe going to be another hot take, normalize seeing your dog stressed.
Yeah.
Right. And again, I'm not talking about traumatizing them, overloading them, but like your dog working through a little bit of stress is not a bad thing. Right. So maybe if you want to talk about, the role of working through stress in order to build a resilient, confident dog.
I think it's maybe like the most important thing. Probably like working through stress and teaching an off switch, or like if people did that without needing help from trainers, I think there would be so few of us, right?
Yeah.
I think if people could just teach their dog, oh, your leash gets wrapped around the telephone pole, just come this way. I'm not going to come undo it for you. Just come this way. And the dog kind of gets like, I don't know. Okay, maybe it's this. Oh my God, it was that. Great.
Yep.
Just teaching dogs to problem solve and to think, and to know that stress doesn't equal a negative outcome, right?
Yeah.
I think that's what a lot of people panic about, is they see the dog stress and they think, oh, he's going to become fearful. He's going to hate lampposts, and he's going to hate his leash, and he's going to...
When actually they're fearful because you're not working them through that, right?
Because, exactly.
It's a little bit of that juxtaposition, right?
Yeah, they haven't seen like the light at the end of the tunnel yet, but once they do, then the next time you encounter a problem that brings up the same feeling, they're going to have a bit more of that like, okay, maybe there's a solution here.
Yeah, and I think that's where I preach at everyone. Teaching your dog anything, for the most part, is never a bad thing, right? It's them problem solving. It's building your relationship with them. It's building that confidence for them, and building your handler dog cooperation skills. Whether it's agility, whether it's trick training, whether it's whatever, I think letting your dog figure things out right? And I think even to a lesser extent, that's maybe the role of like food puzzles or enrichment.
Yep.
Is yeah, it's not stress necessarily, but your dog having to problem solve and mentally sweat a little bit, like, okay,
Yeah.
how do I do this? How do I get this food out? How do I get the ball out of the thing? Right, whatever.
Yep.
It helps to create a resilient dog. It's not the same as working through stress, but it has a role, and it's not the be all end all, but I think it has a role in training for sure.
Yeah, I've actually never thought of like food puzzles and that kind of thing in that way. That's an interesting.
Yeah, and I think some people use them as just a crutch. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to walk my dog. I just give them a puzzle. You know,
It's
every
raining
day.
out. Here's a puzzle.
Exactly. Which again, rainy day activities. There's value in that, but it's not the be all end all, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Right. To go back to kind of what you were saying, where a dog figuring out that, oh, this happens and then that happens. Right. So I think the term is pre-macking, and this is something I've talked about to some other people in previous episodes, but. What do you think the role of that could be, positive or negative, in the sense of like the dog that has associated, oh no, going in the car means we're going to go to the vet, so now I hate the car, right? Or vice versa. If I sit on my place and let mom brush me for 5 minutes, then I get to throw the ball, then I get my bone after, whatever.
Yeah.
So it can be used to our advantage, it can be used against us.
Yeah.
What do you think maybe the role of like pre-macking is when, addressing like dog psychology and teaching a dog that, hey, this behavior leads to this outcome?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot to be said about like routine and that as well. Because yeah, if you're only ever putting your dog in the car to go to the vet, why would it think that this means anything good? If you're only ever brushing your dog and then throwing the ball, then why would it ever, that might even be a negative thing. Why would it ever just relax for the brushing? It might always be like, oh my God.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah.
Gonna go. So just to not be too easy to predict in those ways, I see it a lot when you work with like really smart dogs, like my own border collie, or I just had a collie that finished a board and trained. Dogs that just like predict and assume, and they do it so fast. You do it like 1 or 2 times, they're like, that's what's gonna happen.
And that's where the balance can come in, where routine and consistency is a big part of training, especially at first, right before you've proofed the behavior and whatever. But then also, like, how many times, like, okay, we do sit and then we do down, so now the dog knows that after sit they automatically do down because this is going to come next,
or they're skipping sit and they're going right
they're
to
skipping
down.
exactly 100%. So I think we have to, as handlers, and I don't want to say as trainers, because could be trainers, could be owners, I'd say just as handlers, be aware of the routine that you're creating for your dog. And then once your dog's getting really good at it, throw them curveballs, mix it up a little bit, go out of order, maybe do 4 downs in a row, then do a middle, then do, whatever. So like mixing it up a little bit, so that's where the generalization comes in, right? Where your dog learns, oh, we don't just do it in this one specific way every time.
Yes.
I got to do it in all these different ways, right? And I think that's maybe a step of the process that maybe the average person either doesn't know or skips a little bit, right? Is that like going from like, okay, consistent routine predictability to curveballs, but still setting them up for success in that way, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think that ties back into a bit of the stress resilience too, right? Then they go, oh, this is different. But if they work through it, it's like, oh, it was different and positive, right?
So I know obviously you're big on building an off switch. And again, I think that's a skill that most people don't have with their dog.
Yeah.
And I think most people don't know how to build that off switch.
Yeah.
So like, what are maybe some foundational things that you would, for the average person watching, where do I start if I want to build an off switch for my dog?
Yeah, well, you start with having a lot of patience.
Okay.
That's where you start. But I think a lot of people, one, they don't know how, but even if they do know how, like I put out like reels and stories and that kind of thing, working on this kind of stuff, they might see that, but they might underestimate like the time dedication it's going to take to actually get there, right? I've had dogs where my general setup is we play, we go hard, and then when I see the energy coming down a bit, now we just sit there and I hold the leash and there's no other option but for you to relax, right? And some dogs, they do it in 2 minutes, and some dogs it's 45 minutes before they actually just settle in. Oh, now we get to play again. And so then you're getting rewarded for this relaxing. So I think a lot of people underestimate that you might be standing there for 45 minutes waiting for your dog to relax, right? And then when people are new to this concept, I have them say, well, it was like 10 minutes. And I was like, oh, you got a long ways to go, right?
So, not too dissimilar from a dog even maybe a puppy like barking in the crate, like crate training.
Yes.
Right? Like
Yes.
let them work through it. It might be 2 minutes, it might be half an hour, but eventually they'll self-soothe. And even if you want to take your dog out from the crate, you have to wait for that moment of calmness. If you're reinforcing them while they're being demanding and barking and jumping and freaking out, then they're going to learn this behavior works and I'm going to continue doing it. Right?
Exactly.
And I think, passive training versus active training.
Yep.
Right? Where people think, I think training is like flashy, motion and this and that, where like, again, just teaching a dog calmness, right, is not an inherent skill for a dog. That's a learned behavior a lot of times, right? So I think, teaching your dog how to be calm and to calm down, like you said, on command, to have a switch for it is a really helpful thing that I think a lot of people just don't have with their dog. And I think that's where even like place can kind of come in and be that sort of like, consistent way to do that.
Yeah.
But however you're going to do it, I think, definitely building an off switch is really helpful.
Yeah. I also see the mistake a lot of the time where the dog finally settles and the people start feeding them. Good boy. Good job. Here's your food. And then the dog's all
that
perked
can add
up
arousal again. Right? Yeah.
I was like, we're not going to add in something that's going to, like you said, add arousal. We don't want to keep them up. If they've settled, let's let them settle. Right? I'm not asking for a down. That's different. If I'm training a down, then I'm going to reward it because I want the dog down.
Sure. You want to reinforce that position.
Yeah, and I want them kind of awaiting further instruction. There's a difference to me between hold like a formal down and like relax.
Yes. Yep.
Right?
And it's interesting because I was talking to, Chris Sykes on a previous episode.
Cool.
And he was saying, a lot of times working with working dogs in dog sports, those dogs, because a lot of times they're so play driven, right? Their play drive, their ball drive, the tug drive is so high that food is actually aversive to them. Yeah. Right?
Yep.
The dog takes like, the fuck is it? I don't want this. Give me the toy. I don't want this, screw your treat, whatever. So I think knowing what is rewarding to your dog, right? Because if your dog is calm and you start adding something of high value, if it's food, then, but you're going to add all that arousal, you're going to undo, it's counterproductive what you're trying to do.
45 minutes trying to do.
Exactly, right? And vice versa, we don't get to decide what our dog finds rewarding, what our dog finds aversive. Your dog decides what they like and what they don't like. Right. And then we use that to our advantage. Sure, you can condition it and you can change those associations over time. But just from the beginning, your dog decides what they like and what they don't like. Right. So I think using what, a lot of people are like, oh, I just want to use praise. But you have a super high drivey play, toy, ball drive dog, but you don't want to use the ball. Or like, I don't want to use food. But why? Your dog loves food. Use, use what works for your dog, right?
And how often do you see it when you're working with recall with a client and the dog comes and they pet the dog's head and the dog ducks and is gone again?
Not interested.
Like, I don't want that.
Yeah, exactly.
If I could have all this, I don't want that.
Yeah, right? and also you're building that predictor for your dog where, okay, if I come back, I'm going to get that pat on the head. But I don't want a pat on the head. I want to chase that squirrel right now. Right now, that squirrel is way better than your pat on the head.
Yeah.
Right? So having high value rewards, again, whatever that is for your dog. Now, with that being said, there obviously is a little bit of like the whole sexier than a squirrel kind of, and again, there is value to that. With that being said, for dogs with high prey drive, there's probably no treat you're going to have in your pouch that's better than that squirrel. Right?
I would even argue just majority of dogs, there's probably no treat that's better than the freedom that they've had.
Yeah. And then that's, I think, where consequences come in.
Yeah.
Right? Because you need to not only have high value rewards, but you have to devalue that squirrel.
Yeah.
Right? So your dog starts to, it evens the playing field. We're like, okay, the beef liver is cool. I like beef liver, but I get that all the time. I only get to chase that squirrel right now.
Yeah.
So right now that squirrel is here and that beef liver is here. Screw your beef liver, right? But all of a sudden, if we, use a correction, maybe whether it's an e-collar, whether it's a long line, whatever you're using, and your dog goes for that squirrel and you correct them a couple of times and your dog starts to figure out, ooh, you know what? When I go for squirrels, I get that kind of unpleasant feelings. You know what? Maybe squirrels went from here to here. All of a sudden, now it's kind of maybe that treat doesn't look so bad all of a sudden, right?
Exactly, right? And it's like, well, if it's that or nothing, the squirrel's not an option, then
I know
why
it's going to sound, here come the positive only people saying abuse, but it's kind of like if someone comes up to you like, hey, do you want a high five? And you're like, not particularly.
Yeah.
Like, okay, well, your other option is a smack in the head. You're like, okay, I guess I'll take the high five. You know what I mean? Like, so again, we're not hitting dogs. Nobody's hitting dogs. But yeah,
you heard it here first.
Yeah, he hits dogs. But yeah, all of a sudden that high five looks a lot better. You know what I mean? That beef liver looks a lot better once we've devalued the other option, right?
And I also get the question quite often, well, like, should my dog be chasing squirrels? And I think it really depends on where you're at in your training with your dog, like especially if we're talking recall specifically. For my personal dogs, if you're on a leash, that's absolutely not an option. But dogs understand context, right? Yeah. They know when they're on a leash. They know when we're walking like this.
And if they know leash pressure, right? They know that once I feel that pressure, don't pull through, kind of give into it.
Yeah, and they know the difference between that and we're out on a hike. I don't care what you chase. Yeah. As long as it's not dangerous to the thing or you, I don't care.
And as long as you have the trust in your dog that you can recall them off of it.
Yeah.
Right. I think I let my dog chase squirrels.
Yeah.
But I'm confident that if I say, leave it here, come touch whatever recall I choose to use in that moment, I know my dog's be like, okay, time to forget about that. And now I have this task to do.
And that's why I started with, it depends on where you're at in your training. If your dog is brand new to recall, well, we're probably going to try and avoid squirrels in the first place. But no, I'm not going to let them run after a squirrel because they're not going to come back.
And also I think to that point too, if you have, not you, like you, the general you, if you have no or low standards and expectations for your dog 95% of the time, then all of a sudden you want them to listen to you on a hike.
Yes.
Probably not going to happen, right? If your dog gets to, stare out the window all day and bark at every single thing that goes by without consequence, without reward, without information. Just they get to sit at the bay window and bark at dog, squirrel, kids, mailman, whatever. Okay. And then you're on a walk and you say, I don't want my dog to bark at these things, or I don't want my dog to bark when someone comes to the front door. Yeah. It's like your dog has been practicing that behavior 24/7. Now you just want it to stop all of a sudden. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Right. So I think being realistic about like the behaviors you allow are the behaviors that will continue. Right. And until you have those other skills in your toolbox where you can say, leave it, forget about that, focus on me instead, whatever commands you're building with your dog. But yeah, I think if you allow your dog to chase squirrels in the backyard, but then you don't want them to chase them on your leash, right? If you've allowed that behavior 90% of the time, your dog's going to think this is an unallowed behavior.
Exactly. And pretty well, no matter what you're talking about, you get good at what you practice, right? Across the board, people, dogs, doesn't matter. If your dog is practicing, I bark and lunge at dogs when they walk past my house, they're going to get good at that. They're going to start to do it more and in different contexts and more often. And this is always a conversation that I have around crate training dogs. I think that's a big piece of the puzzle that's missing for a lot of people struggling with reactivity is, like you're saying, the dog does whatever in the house and suddenly they go outside and then the person's getting all frustrated. Well, why do you do this? Why can't you stop doing this? Well, when you're at work for the day, that's what they're doing, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right. And then people get frustrated. Say, okay, well, how do I fix that? And the reality is you have to maybe restrict access to that front window. Maybe you have to sit with them at that front window for half an hour. And if they react, correct them. And if they don't react, reward them. Right. So you have to set up and create training scenarios. But if your dog is left to their own devices, then they're going to do what they want to do, which is barking and jumping and all the things that are fun to them. Right. Which we can't blame them for, because if you haven't given them an alternative behavior or any type of instruction or expectation, then that's on us as the owner, not on the dog.
Yeah, and I think it ties back to how you're saying there's active versus passive training. There's always going to be those active training sessions when dealing with behavioral issues, but there's also going to be management and fulfillment, which are far more passive, right? If your dog is a working line, border collie, mal, whatever, and you're not doing anything with it, of course it's going to lose its mind and everything that comes fast, right? And that's an extreme example, but just to use it as an example, you need to let that dog let that like energy out, take the edge off, and then they're probably more inclined to make better decisions. But when you can't be there to help them make those better decisions, that's when management comes into play, right?
So speaking of giving our dog an outlet, what are your thoughts on people that, are big on daycare or dog parks as a way to I just want to tire my dog out, or I want to socialize it? Where do you kind of fall in the dog park, daycare, play date kind of socialization, aspect.
Yeah, I think there's a big difference between tiring your dog out and fulfilling your dog.
Yep.
I think your dog probably could go run and zoom for hours in the dog park, and sure, maybe they're tired after, but they're not getting that like at peace feeling that comes through fulfillment. It's a different feeling than like when I take my dog herding, and after her herding lesson, she's like, wow.
Yeah, because there was
Right?
mental engagement in that, right? There was
Yes.
a task, there was a
And
job.
it's so strong to her genetics.
Yeah.
And it's not just like I'm exhausted because I ran hot laps. It's
Yep.
I used my brain. I feel good about what I did. Like it almost alleviates something.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So yeah, daycare and dog parks especially stress me out.
Yep. I think most trainers are probably in the same camp on that.
And I wish there was more daycare because it could totally be a practical thing. It's
More
something-
structured daycare.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was going to say,
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
more daycare that people could actually use in a way that's going to benefit them
Yep.
and their dog, right? Like if, the dog's crated or kenneled, but then it goes out for like a pack walk or a hike or
Yeah.
something like that. And it's not just dogs in a fenced in yard that just go wild
Yep.
all day.
Totally. 100% agree. And that's, my standpoint on that has changed over the years. Like I used to do dog parks years ago, but after enough bad experiences, after enough like horror stories, like, you know what? The minimal benefit of my dog coming home a little bit tired versus the risk to reward there is just not worth it, right?
Yep.
I actually towards the end would love, at the beginning I would drive to the dog park, like, oh, there's nobody here. It's annoying. I drove here. Towards the end, I love that. I was like, I drive, there's nobody here. Perfect. Now we can practice our recall. We can,
Yes.
proof our behaviors in a new environment,
Yeah.
with limited distractions. So yeah, I think going to the dog park and even like working outside the dog park,
Yes.
right? Dog park can be a great,
be a great
control
training tool.
distraction. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So maybe work outside of it, right? So there are ways to utilize even things that I don't love. There are ways to utilize it in a very positive way still, right? Where it can still be helpful.
And I think the best example of that is if you do take your dog to do a session outside of the dog park, it's a perfect example for why dog parks aren't great for dogs because every dog is barking at the fence at you, right?
Yep.
None of them are like, okay, whatever, play with my owner. They're all just barking at the fence at, oh my God, there's a dog.
Yeah, 100%.
Right?
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
like, well, there it is. Speaks for itself.
Yeah, and I think that's where like engagement comes in, right? Like you as the owner and handler building more value for you rather than the environment, right? And maybe that goes back to the sexier than a squirrel stuff, but we want the dog to know that the playing with other dogs is fun, but the fun part is hanging out with mom, doing our games, doing like things together, right? So yeah, dogs are cool and I like dogs, but the fun part for me is bonding with mom and dad or whoever is the dog's handler, right?
Yeah, and that's a huge focus for my puppy right now. We have yet to like go for a walk. I haven't yet put her on a leash and taken her for a walk. Okay. We go to a park and we play with the flirt pole.
Nice.
We practice recall. We play tug. I let her observe and then I redirect her back to play. Because I don't want it to just be this thing where I'm mindlessly holding a leash and she's doing whatever. I want to show her that you can go to these places and I'm still relevant to you. I'm still exciting to you. I still have value, right?
What are your thoughts on bringing a dog out, before it has all its shots?
I'm all for it. I'm doing it. So
Okay.
I can't really say,
all right. There we go.
I can't really say don't.
Fair. That's valid.
I think like you can be smart about it too, right? Like I'm taking her to a field that's big enough that I can see if there's someone coming close because you probably don't want, I definitely don't want interactions with strange dogs or even like she's pretty people social, but I don't want an interaction with every person. But you can keep your dog safe with still like taking them out and doing stuff. Right?
So when you say you don't want interactions with every person, what would you say to the owner coming to you saying, Kyra, what do I say when people say, oh, can I pet your puppy? And, I don't want to be confrontational and I don't want to be rude, but like, I don't want them to, I want to work on our training and that's going to undermine the training. Like, what do I say? How do I handle that situation?
Yeah. For me personally, I've got pretty good at just, no, thank you. Because I say it so often, right? Whether it's with my puppy or with reactive dogs or whatever, you get pretty used to it. But when people get worried about that social pressure, and I do understand that, I find the best thing is just saying we're in training. People are very respectful about when you say, no, thanks, we're working on training. Oh, okay, good for you, right?
The classic is, oh, my dog, is reactive. My dog doesn't like men or whatever. Oh, don't worry, dogs love me. I'm like, you say so. Like, I don't think so, but all right.
Yeah. I'm like, we're not going to test it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I had a guy where, my dog wasn't reactive, but she, was weary of men, right? She'd be like, I don't know. She's never done anything, never reacted, but like, just like doesn't want that interaction, right? And we were at a store, we're at Gulf Town in the winter, and we're walking around, and this older gentleman comes and kind of goes to like approach her, and I kind of stopped. I was like, excuse me, I'm trying to teach her to like men, and she's a little bit unsure of men, and I don't want her to get excitable with people. I want her to just be calm around people. And he looked me dead in the eyes. And he goes, "She'll get over it." And I'm like, okay, well, if she rips your finger off, I don't want to hear about it because like I warned you. You know what I mean? Like if somebody's actively telling you, "Hey, my dog doesn't like this. My dog doesn't want your hand in its face," and you say, "Well, I'm going to do it anyways." Then you know what? Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Like, it's your own damn fault.
Yeah, absolutely. But also, why do you need to?
Yeah.
Why do you need to touch that dog so badly?
Yeah.
Right? What point are you trying to prove?
Yeah, we should analyze that psychology. Dog training is a lot of psychology, but that's a psychology that I don't understand.
Yeah.
So someone smarter than me, please explain why people do that because I don't get it.
I find it's the worst with dog on dog. Hey, my dog's fearful. It needs space. Yeah. Oh, mine's fine.
Yeah.
Like, well, why? I understand.
It's a two-way street. Yours can be whatever, but if mine is this way, then mine is this way.
Yes. Yeah. And I understand, I don't agree with it, of course, but I understand the other person not considering the potential training fallout of your dog, right? I don't understand them not looking out for their own dog's safety. Well, if this dog is a genuine threat, if your dog gets up in its face, why are you so okay with that?
Yeah.
Right? And I bet they're not going to be okay with paying the vet bill for it. Yep. They're going to want to send that over to me, the person who warned them about it.
Yep. And I think a lot of people just haven't had, and again, like, even for me, until you have that bad experience with an on-leash greeting or at the dog park or whatever, and you're like, oh, this is why people don't do it. Now I get it, right? But like, we're here to like prevent you from having to go through the hard, learn the hard way and vet bills and, training expenses now because you got to undo this negative association. Like we're trying to help you avoid those situations. It's going to be better for you and better for your dog in the long run for sure.
Exactly. And ultimately, it's not up to you if your dog approaches me. Even if I have no reason, it's my dog.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
and
all
that
the
should be
reason I
enough.
need. Yeah.
Right? That should be enough. Awesome. Well, we're just about there time-wise. Kyra, why don't you kind of mention where people can find you if you want to plug your Instagram website? Like where can people get a hold of you and see your content and reach out to you if they have any training inquiries?
Yeah, I'm definitely most active on my Instagram, which is just Simcoe County Canine.
Awesome.
And then, if people want to reach out, they can message me through there or my contact info is available on Google if they just Google Simcoe County Canine.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, thank you very much for being here. It was a pleasure getting to chat a little bit and happy to have you on again at any point.
Thanks so much. I was happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. See you next time on the Pet to Pal podcast.